Hello, welcome to Loyola Marymount University. I'm Dr. Jill Bickett. I'm the Director of the Doctoral Program in Educational Leadership for Social Justice. And today we are presenting two of our illustrious graduates, Chris Anderson, who recently graduated and whose dissertation was called Baptism by Fire, a case study of Chinese international students in an American Catholic secondary school, and also Michel-Anthony Castillo, who wrote about culturally responsive school leadership in Catholic education, practices to improve tuition assistance, and community outreach for Latino families. So as you can see, our presentation today will be focused on Catholic leadership in education and also about accessibility to Catholic schools. Before we get to the presentation today, if you're interested in learning more about our doctoral program here at Loyola Marymount, please go online and fill out our inquiry form, and we'll be happy to connect with you and make sure you get all the information you need.
Thank you, Dr. Bickett, for introducing us. Again, my name is Chris Anderson. I'm a leader at Catholic School in the Diocese of Los Angeles.
My name is Mike Castillo. I'm also a Catholic school leader within the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
And today we're going to talk about our experience in leadership positions in the Catholic school context, specifically in reference to accessibility to our schools and to our programming.
Yes, so with respect to accessibility, it's something that we've certainly been thinking about over our careers, particularly with respect to our administrative positions, but with the doctoral program specifically, it gave us an opportunity to really engage that topic from the scholar side and being able to put together studies that address accessibility within the Catholic school context. So my study in particular related to culturally responsive school leadership within Catholic schools as it relates to tuition assistance policies and community outreach for Latino families. So from a historical perspective, one of the ongoing concerns among Catholic schools across the nations is declining enrollment, but specifically from the families and students' perspective, the increasing cost of Catholic school education and within the changing demographics in the United States for the church, but also our Catholic school communities, is what is coming down to the increasingly prohibitive cost of Catholic schools. So from the social justice lens, which is the cornerstone of the doctoral program, the entry point, as it were, to my study was really trying to tackle and look at that accessibility issue and what policies and procedures are in place for the development of tuition assistance policies and community outreach efforts.
Yeah, in my study, as Dr. Bickett mentioned, it was titled Baptism by Fire. It was a look at the experience of Chinese international students in a Catholic secondary school. And I became passionate about this experience right from the onset. My first year as a classroom teacher, I had two international students in my class. And as I continued to grow in the profession, then ultimately move into an administrative role, the phenomenon of more and more international students in our classrooms, there was an increase there. And so I started to think about, how accessible is our academic and social and cultural programming for this group of students. And so I really wanted to be able to look at how are we making our programming culturally relevant for all of our students and not just our traditional domestic students.
Right, so to speak a little bit more specifically about the study itself and the results and implications as it relates to the Catholic school context, my study was grounded in culturally responsive school leadership as a theory and has a long, rich history, rich research tradition based in culturally responsive pedagogy, specifically from Geneva Gay. But more recently, the idea and importance of school site leaders, principals in particular, as having a strong impact and influence on cultural responsiveness for the entire school community. And as Chris had mentioned, the idea and notion of making sure that our day-to-day actions as Catholic school leaders are giving voice and agency to our community members is something that I wanted to look at. So within the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, my study specifically addressed and engaged Catholic school principals with survey as well as follow-up qualitative interviews to establish leadership case studies. But within that, ultimately came down to it is that Catholic school leaders, at least from the findings of my study, certainly acknowledge the importance of cultural responsiveness as it particularly relates to even Catholic social teaching. But at the same time, when it gets down to it, for a variety of different reasons, the practices, actual leadership practices of cultural responsive leadership does vary and at times is inconsistently applied. So in terms of kind of the next steps or the implications, there is that work to be done between bridging theory and practice, or at least connecting elements of preferential option for the poor, solidarity as well-known Catholic social teaching tenets, but then connecting them to culture responsiveness, but then also on a day-in, day-out basis, working with our communities to actually bring them in and make sure that we are working in partnership with them.
Yeah, as a leader in a Catholic school, what I really took from this study is obviously we have this particular population of students, international students, that are increasing in our schools, and we need to be culturally responsive and academically responsive to their needs and where they're coming from and meeting them where they're at. But I quickly realized that we have all different types of populations in our schools, English language learners, students with learning differences, even highly gifted students as well, that really quickly learning and seeing that instilling teaching practices in our teachers as a leader is so important, that they are differentiating their instruction. They are bringing experiences to the classroom that meet each of those students' needs. And very quickly, the outcome that came from it that I saw is that differentiating instruction for just one particular group of students is really just good pedagogy for all of our different groups of students. And so really understanding as a leader, how are we framing our professional development for our faculty and our staff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one aspect that reminds me of is just the idea or notion of constituents within our school community. However, if you're looking at culturally responsive leadership and working in partnership with families and students of color, it comes down to really being able to be aware, and as the theory defines it, critical self-reflection and being able to interrogate your own positionality, to what extent you're coming in a position of privilege or power, and how that's going to affect your various assumptions about students and teachers or family members and parents, and being able to really be able to recognize and have an honest reflection as a school leader, but then by extension with your teachers as well, to ensure that we're truly serving our families.
Yeah, and I continually go back to the thought of thinking it was one of the first pieces, one of the first works that we read in our program, in our graduate studies here at Loyola Marymount, was A Parish School by Tim Walsh. And he does a historical look at the history of Catholic schools in the United States, and starts from the very beginning of what was the purpose of Catholic schools from the outset in the middle of the 19th century, and it was to be an option for the poor and vulnerable in the context at that time. And so looking at the state of our church, of our schools, and looking at, okay, going back to what was that original mission, being able to create schools, create opportunities where the poorest and most vulnerable of our populations can receive a strong Catholic foundation-based education.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And one of the toughest tasks of completing the doctoral research is trying to figure out how to kind of sum it all up. But it's I think important that, Krista, you mentioned that, because the way I was able to conceptualize it, and I hope I did it justice, was that there is that long-standing tradition and mission of Catholic education, and my research certainly revealed that Catholic school leaders are mindful of that and want to serve in that capacity, but just the complexity, I think, of the context right now, in my case with the financial accessibility and logistics community outreach. But I do agree that it is representing work on the part of all Catholic school leaders to return to that call to mission. Not that they're not doing it, but I think it's a call to action to be able to just be conscious and aware of the ongoing research base and the work of not only scholars but practitioners as well, who are doing the good work in the field.
And that's where I think it takes the call to be innovative and to look at what the actual definition of innovation means to each one of us. And it's not this notion of we need to come up with something new and something completely outside the box. What it is taking what we already do, a strong Catholic foundation education, taking it where we want to be able to provide a values-based education to our students, but be innovative about it, find new programming, be it career pathways, be it being able to have highly gifted programs, be it to be able to have specific programs that are able to meet the needs of students with learning differences, or students that are international students, or being able to innovatively find ways to fund tuition assistant programs so that families that really do want to and value our Catholic education system have access to it. Yeah. One of the greatest fears, that someone asked me the question once of, as a Catholic school leader, what's your greatest fear? And when you think of that, you don't really think of what are your fears. But when I sat there and I stewed with it, what really came to my mind was, I have a family in front of me that wants to be a part of our community so bad, and the only reason why they can't is finances. And so that need to be innovative to find access for them is crucial. That is our call as Catholic leaders.
Right. Yeah, and it's a tough gig in that sense. Working with that reality, and we want to be able to work with families and communities to the greatest extent possible. I would say, just at least from my perspective now, that was something that I value about the experience in the doctoral program, and being constantly working with the scholar and practitioner part, the theory and praxis, and being able to work to kind of bridge that divide, and being able to have, at least now, that research background, but also just kind of the toolbox and mindset and mentality to be able to work with things at the theoretical level, and be able to look at that in a more critical way, but just kind of inform, what is happening daily.
Yeah, no, I look at our program and the experience in the doctoral program, and obviously access to tremendous professors, and being able to look at research and theory, but honestly being able to come to class every night, once a week, and sit with 16 of some of the greatest educators I've ever been around in my life, and just to be able to, this is what happened this week in school, and be able to go back and forth and bounce it off, and talk about what are the issues in our context, and being able to apply them in our everyday life, being able to take that theory that we're talking about in class, and then sitting with it with the 16 other people in that room, including yourself, and then ultimately be able to take that back to my school, and have a solution for my community. That's something that I just can't put a price on.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that, thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to be able to speak to our experience at Loyola Marymount in the doctoral program, and thank you, Mike, for having this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate the time, Chris, and thank you to Dr. Bickett as well for organizing this. It's always a great opportunity to be able to come back to LMU, and particularly be able to speak about Catholic education in general, but also I think just the time and opportunity to reflect on our experience is always something that I value and appreciate. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.